Once a giant, always a giant.
Welcome back to All Day Giants. Today we are here with Kevin, known as Uncut Giants. Follow him on Instagram, as you can see right there. Today we're just going to be going over some things that. Well, no. First, go ahead and introduce yourself, Kev.
I'm Kevin. I run Uncut Giants on Instagram.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about. Well, first let's start off with Kevin Zeitler being released. How do you feel about that? Do you feel he should have been restructured? How do you feel about that?
I feel like he should have been restructured, but I feel like they had to have contacted him about it before, and I think it was just for the best interest for him to go to a winning team and us the fee of all the money instead of just part of it. It was a restructure.
Yeah, I agree. I think how Dave Gettleman is really, like he said, he's not into restructuring contracts and things like that. And I do agree that he should go to a winning team with him being 31 and not being in the prime of his career. So I think he can help out a team like the Chiefs, who have released most of their O-line in the past few days. So I think he can help with a team like that. I also do agree that with it where we are at now, I think freeing up all of the money instead of just some would help out a lot more than freeing up part of it and then still having him on the team. Now, I do think we're gonna miss him. How do you feel about going into the next year with Thomas, Hernandez, Gates, Lemieux, and then Pert as our offensive line?
Let me finish up the topic before that. I do also agree with Gettleman for once to not restructure, because next year, if we restructure the contract, it's more money added on next year, which means you're just delaying the problem. I mean, we'll have more money next year, but at the same time, if we have less flexibility this year and have more next year, it just opens up the possibilities next year. It's just you got to wait a year. But I feel good about our line. I think we still need a solid veteran player. I like Thomas. I like Parrott, Lemieux, Hernandez, Gates. I think that can be solid, but I think we need just one more veteran, not Cam Fleming type. But if Soldier wants to stay and he's, average or something, or if we get rid of Soldier and we add a veteran lineman at all, even if it's tackle, guard, or center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So what you think about? Oh yeah, you answered that question. So out of the bunch, which one would you say is your favorite between like our O linemen? Because they're all young and they've all shown some type of potential. I know Lemieux is very bad in the pass game, but he's good in the run game. Gates impressed over this year. Thomas had his ups and downs. Who's your favorite?
Nick Gates. I think he's got that toughness in him because Aaron Donald, anybody, he just takes them on, he pisses them off, and I love it.
Yeah, I was gonna double down on that one. I love me some Nick Gates. Like you said, him going up against Aaron Donald, most people don't do that. Like a lot of offensive linemen wouldn't go toe to toe, grabbing face masks with Aaron Donald, and he didn't shy down from stepping up for his teammates. Let's move on to Solder. Like Solder was arguably one of the worst deals Gettleman made during his tenure with us as the Giants. So what's your opinion on that whole situation?
I can't believe that I loved this signing so much. As soon as I remember exactly where I was and everything, I was so happy that we finally got a franchise tackle, and just on no words to explain how bad he is. And getting paid 16 mil, it's just unbelievable. I wouldn't mind him back if he takes away a lot of the money, but I mean, he's old. He has health concerns on and off the field with his cancer in his past, and I think his kid's sick too, so he might still not want anything with COVID, so he might not even play this year. He might just retire. But yeah, I'd take him back if it's on a cheap deal. Anything less than 5 mil.
Yeah, you're more of a contract guy than I am personally myself. I don't really do that restructuring, things like that. I just hear front load, back load. You actually were the one who taught me and told me about what all that is about and things like that. Personally, when we first signed him, I wasn't like too like I don't really remember it. Like I wasn't like crazy happy about the signing. I wasn't mad about it or anything like that. It was just okay. We got a tackle, and everybody had high expectations for this guy, knowing that he was previously good with the Patriots. And then when he came with us, he just couldn't block a soul. I remember in the Chicago game when Khalil Mack just took him by one hand and just drove him into Eli. And I was like, it's no way we're giving this guy all this money. And this is what he's doing. I couldn't believe it. Let's move on to the presser between Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge this past week. Let's start out with Joe Judge because he went first, and I don't want to get the negative parts out first. So let's start out with Joe Judge.
He was starting positive.
Yeah, let's start positive.
I love everything he says. He didn't. I wouldn't say like leak any plans for like if we're gonna draft a receiver, tackle. He's just well spoken, and he said exactly what I thought he'd say. It's just we're gonna play who we play, we're gonna sign who we sign, and it's at the end of the day, we're just gonna try to compete, play 60 minutes of football. So
Yeah, the way Joe Judge talks, it just makes me want to put on the helmet and go play for him. He talks like he knows what he wants to do. He means it. He's all for it. And like you said, I think one thing I've learned since I'm new to Giants Twitter, but one thing I've learned is that the Giants previously, like before Joe Judge, leaked out all their picks. Like people knew who they were getting before the pick actually happened, and that's not something you want. You want people to be surprised or mysterious until your pick comes. And I think that's one thing I heard with Joe Judge is that this year nobody knew. I mean, some people, you obviously knew we were taking a tackle because that's our number one position, but nobody knew which tackle we would take. People thought it was worse. Some people thought it was Becton, and it just wasn't out there. So I think that's one thing. That's one of my favorite things about Judge is how he controls the media. And the first time he stepped on the media, that was something that I liked about him too, was that this guy sounds like he knows what he wants to do. He means it. And he just sounds like he's a down-to-earth type of guy who's all about this team.
it's way different than McAdoo and Shermer. You could just feel that he changed our team totally.
Yeah, like I know people like to see like our character and what our team is about. And I know everybody looks at Odell and things. And I genuinely, I'm not going to say I wish we didn't trade him because I know, in my opinion, we won the trade a bit looking back now. But I think that like Odell would have been able to control himself under Joe Judge's scheme and how he is as a person. I don't think McAdoo and Shermer, like when they talk, they didn't sound sure. They just gave coach speak and they sounded scared when they talk. When Joe Judge talks, he's affirmative and he's sure about what he wants to do. And I think if Odell would have been under Joe Judge, he would have fixed his act a bit and wouldn't have had the outburst. Oh, let's go to the negative side and let's switch to Dave Gettleman. I'll let you go first.
Tay Crawford. Our GM doesn't even know who's on our team, what their name is. I mean, it's awful. But I mean, he's old, so I wasn't surprised. I'm not a huge fan of him, but he's done some good for our team. But I mean, I feel like he said more than Judge in more the roster aspect, which I feel like Judge isn't all about. So I was hoping Judge would rub off on him with there's no starters until you're on the field, blah blah blah. But he was just kind of like Daniel Jones starting. He named the whole entire starting offensive line. He said he likes the team. Obviously, he says we're close. The past 3 years, he said we're getting there. Or he said we're close the past 3 years, and this year he said we're almost there. So that's a step up.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, the fact that he named Chris Williamson on our practice squad, and he's been in Atlanta for half the year is just I can't even fathom that.
Yeah, like when I heard, like, I personally had to leave. I like to turn it off, so I couldn't watch toward the end. But when I heard that our general manager was one, he didn't know who was our second linebacker on the roster who played a big part of this team this year, and who called him Tate Crawford. That was, I mean, that's embarrassing. Anybody who's not a Giants fan looking in can just be like, okay, yeah, this guy's a joke. He doesn't even know his own roster. And then he says Chris Williamson is on the practice squad, and I'm like, this guy hasn't been on your team for a long time, and you still think he's there. And I know he's old, and people like to give him some credit, like, or not credit, but like to give him some leeway due to him being old. But at the end of the day, you're the general manager, so you're gonna have to be that position regardless of your age, and you're gonna have to do what you have to do. I don't like the way Gettleman talks. Like you said, he likes to talk about specific positions. He doesn't rub off of what Joe Judge has been doing. I think he's a little bit more outgoing than Judge is. Like, Judge knows what he's doing, but he doesn't want to tell you. Gettleman has no problem telling you his plan. And like you touched on it, you said, we're close. I'm tired of being close. I want to be there. I don't want to be, okay, we got to wait until next year. We got to wait until the draft. I don't want to do that no more. I want to be in the playoffs. I want to have, when people talk, I want to be listed as a Super Bowl contender. I want to have a good roster. Like, next year, we won't even, at the end of the season next year, I cannot say that Dave Gettleman will have a job, that Daniel Jones will have a job, neither will Jason Garrett have a job. I can't say none of those options. I can say Joe Judge will have a job, because regardless of what we do, Joe Judge will have a job because he's a good coach. You can tell that by what he's done. Those three that I've listed, I mean, Jones is a Gettleman pick, so we all are like, if Gettleman's gone, most likely Jones is gone too. What do you think about Jason Garrett? Like, the fact that it was some rumors that he was going to get the Chargers job. He didn't end up getting the Chargers job. I touched on it many times on this channel about how I think his scheme isn't what it needs to be. Like, how do you view Garrett and what we need to do with him?
His scheme is boring, and you can't have boring football nowadays. I know some people just want to have a rock-solid offense, just run the ball, easy passes and stuff like that, but nowadays you have to have that dynamic offense. You can't just run inside zone 10 times in a row. You can't run power. You can't run slants and hitches. You have to be creative, and he's not creative. He's just like Gettleman. He's stuck in the old days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was upset when he didn't get off the staff or signed by somebody else, but you got to live with it. So
yeah, it's something that we can't control, honestly. And it's like, I don't want Garrett to be the offensive coordinator. And I think he has one thing going for himself that is, in my opinion, the only reason he has a job. When you have the 31st ranked offense, you should not have a job by the end of that season. So I think it's because Daniel Jones is in his third year, and the fact that he would have had 3 different offensive coordinators over his career. And when you want a guy like, we want Jones to take that year 3 leap similar to Josh Allen, but he can't do that if he has to keep learning new systems. And I'm not going to take it away from him. He's a very smart guy, but you can't keep expecting this guy to, okay, you have to be a top 10 quarterback, but you have to learn this new scheme. Like Colin Cowherd says it all the time. A guy is much better his second year in the offense. And I think that if he learns first of all, Garrett's offense isn't complicated. Like you said, it's a bunch of slant hitches, power O's, and inside zones, and it's not very complicated at all. But that's why I'm a big advocate for taking Waddle at 11, because, like, if you have Waddle, you have no choice but to go deep. Like, Daniel Jones, I think, only attempted like 40 deep ball passes this season, and that's just embarrassing. Brady does that in like 2-3 games. Like, you can't want this guy to be a top 10 quarterback if he's only throwing the ball deep 40 times. So a big part of this falls on Garrett and how he doesn't do his job and have a good offense. Like, you look at the Chiefs run a different play, a new surprise play every game. Like, you look back to the Super Bowl when they ran that play on 3rd and 15 to save the game. They've got, like, it's a passing league, and you've got to be able to pass the ball, and they can't just be 5-10 yards. Like, our offense is built to pick up a first down every 3 plays, and that's not how your offense can be if you want them to succeed.
Yeah, I agree with you have to run 3 plays just to get 10 yards. You have to have an offense where you can get 10 yards in one play. You can't just settle for 10 yards and 3 downs. Stupid. It just makes no sense.
Not one bit. You got to have a play who you think can score. Like every time you get a first down, you have to have at least one play where you can think, okay, we can score off this play. Not, okay, we're gonna get this play and we're gonna pick up 2-3 yards so that we can do it three more times and pick up a first down. Because eventually, when you don't pick up any yards on a play, then you're stuck and you're like, what do I do? Now let's move to the offseason. Who's everybody pretty much with how franchise tagging has went and re-signing has a similar guy who we all want. Is Kenny Galladay? Would you say Kenny Galladay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So we all say Kenny Galladay. So we're gonna dig deeper than that. Who's one offseason target that you think is a bit of a sleeper that you want us to target or to at least have interest in?
I got a few names. I know you said one.
Have at it.
Offense, probably Corey Davis, just because I view him as like a Bradbury of last year. He's one of those dudes who had a promising career so far, but if he just goes to new scheme, new system, I think he can really step it up and become a top receiver because he's got the height, he's got the skill to do it. It's just he doesn't really get the opportunity, especially with AJ Brown there. And then defense, he's not really a sleeper, but I'd really, really love to get Shaq Barrett if he doesn't come back. I think we just need a pure pass rusher. Um, Also Leonard Floyd, I think that's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, from
We've
the
been
Rams.
connected to him ever since the draft, and he had 11 and a half sacks this year, and we just need somebody who can produce. Like he doesn't have to be an Aaron Donald type. He doesn't need to get pass rush every play. He just needs to be able to do his job and do it better than most people.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Corey Davis, I do view as like a lot of people like to call him a bust with being the fifth pick, and I'm not going to say he's lived up to the potential of a fifth pick as a wide receiver, but look at the team he's on. He's on a run dominant team. That's why AJ Brown doesn't have the great seasons like everybody thinks he can have because they're feeding Derrick Henry the ball 30, 40 times a game. And you can't really expect the receiver to dominate in a system like that, similar to the Ravens system. Like I know they don't have a wide receiver one there, but you can't expect them to have their receivers to have great seasons when they're a run dominant scheme. Now I'll do mine. I think Kenny Galladay comes one with mine. If he's the only guy we get, then I would be more than happy. I'd get his jersey as soon as I hear it's official. Like you said, Corey Davis, I do view him. I think a big part of his game is that people don't look at is how well of a blocker he is. I think he's a very good blocker. And I think he's really good after the catch. And that's what people like. If you look at a lot of his games, and it's funny because he either has like a 0 catch game or a 100+ yard game. It's never in between. So that's what I like about him. Defensively, my biggest concern is that we don't do anything, that we just re-sign Jabril Peppers. That's my only concern because I've been hearing way too much about him being a cap casualty, and I'd rather us restructure everybody's contract before we let him go. He is electrifying, and he is a key part to that defense to where he brings life. Like all of those guys, you don't see none of those guys doing backflips or none of that. Like he just brings energy. Now, speaking of the defense, you're on my side. I've talked to you many times off the air about the Leonard Williams situation and how tagging and trading him is just our number one option, especially. But just today, I saw a report that said he's like the deal that he would most likely get is 21 plus, and I just thought that's insane. If you do that before trading him, it's ridiculous. Please tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, I saw it was 21 and a half. They want 21.5 per year at maybe 22 mil per year. It's just unbelievable. It's like if you have him on a franchise tag, you need to explore trades because you never know. Somebody could offer a high pick because they don't know the value, I mean, Yannick got traded for a third last year, and he was highly coveted last year. And it was a third that turned into a second. So it was a pretty valuable third-round pick. So Leonard Williams is coming off a fantastic season, 11 and a half sacks, bunch of tackles for losses. You could really get value from that instead of paying him 22 a year that he does not deserve.
Yeah, I don't think he deserves that at all. And I think I do like he does get sacks, he does command double teams and things like that, but I do think he benefited from Patrick Graham's scheme, like a lot of defensive players, like free agents that would have good seasons under Patrick Graham. And I don't think he's worth 21, 22 mil a year because unless the only person on defense I would give that much money to is like Aaron Donald. And he is not Aaron Donald at all. He does command double teams and he does get in the backfield, but I don't like how he does some things. People are just forgetting the fact that he put up 0.5 sacks for his first season here. And I get that was under a worse defensive coordinator and things like that, but that still does show true talent. If you are as good as you make it out to be, it's no way one season you should have had 0.5 sacks, in my opinion. I'm not for paying him 21.
I agree with you there. Like, you can't say you want 22 mil after 11 and a half sack season, when you did not do that before you came to New York. I mean, half a sack. I know it was. I don't. It was the trade deadline. I know it was half the season with us.
Yeah.
But you have to do more than that in any scheme if you are a 20 million plus a year player.
Yeah, I agree.
Aaron Donald could get 3 sacks a game, and he got half a sack all year. So, it's absurd to me.
Yeah, if you are putting up half a sacks in 8 games, and you're like, if you put up the same like if you put up 10 sacks last season and then 11 and a half this season, I'd be okay. Yeah, go ahead and pay him. He's a big part of this defensive scheme. But just because you had one good season, you cannot actually get paid that much money. Like, you look at Shaq Barrett. Shaq Barrett is one of the best edge threats there are in the NFL to this day, and he might hit free agency from his team. Like, there are guys who are, in my opinion, better at what we need. Like, if we signed Dalvin and got Shaq Barrett, I think our defense would be better than having Dalvin Thompson and Leonard Williams, because we didn't have and I'll say a lot of his sacks were either covered sacks or he came free. And a lot of people will hate, oh, he still got the sack and things like that. But if you're getting at least 4 or 5 of his sacks were either covered sacks or between cover sacks and him coming off free. That means he had at least 5.5 or 5 sacks that were earned. And if you're telling me I'm paying you $22 million for 5.5 earned sacks, that's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll finish it off and we'll talk about the draft. Who's your sleeper pick? I know, you know me. We talked about it many times. Darden is my guy. That's who I will forever preach. If we pick him, I'm getting his jersey because he's just an all-around great receiver who will fall in the later rounds. Who is your sleeper? It can be, you can have 2, either offense or defense, or who's your guy?
I'll do 2 just because I agree with you, Darden. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. And other than that, I have a lot. I mean, I like to think scheme fits are most of the reason why these late round draft picks do really good. And this edge, Dalen Hayes from Notre Dame, I think he could really fit into our system. He's the kind of athletic edge that can play like Cam Brown did this year when he was in. He's kind of like that, and I think he's got a little bit more skill in him. And plus, he goes to Notre Dame, which I feel like always has the solid players coming from the draft into the next level. I mean, look at all the past late round draft picks and even high draft picks that they had that are good. I mean, I just don't think they have many flukes. So I think he's there fundamentally, and especially with the help we need at edge, I think he can come in and produce. Dalen Hayes.
Yeah, I agree with that. A guy who actually you introduced me to, I saw it on your page and I started looking into him a lot more, is Jamin Davis. And I'll also say Chad Surratt are my two favorite prospects. And I know Tate Crowder was good for us. Or I say Tate Crawford was good for us this past season. But I'd also like to get like Jamin Davis and Chad Surratt was a former quarterback, so I think that can help. And Jamin Davis is similar to Devin White, so I just think that would help us on the defensive side. Anything else you want to say about the Giants? Let me know.
They're just gonna be the same thing as last year. They're gonna have a good defense. We're gonna have a hot spot in the season. I feel like we're gonna have a 4 or 5 game span where we really just play together. But I think it's just gonna be the same thing. One more win, I'd say maybe 7, 8 wins, and Edelman will be back. Everybody will be back next year. Garrett will be back, and it's just gonna continue. I hope, I beg that Edelman does something to put this roster above where his thoughts are of what he wants for a roster. I hope Joe Judge takes over more of the personnel, and it's his team, because I do not trust Dave Gettleman to get us into the playoffs. But that's all I'll say.
I agree. Kevin's going to be on the show a lot more. Kevin is a guy I met at Uncut Sports, the article I write for. Kevin's an all-around great guy, and I plan to have him on a lot. He's a guy who knows Giants just like I do. So thank you for coming, Kevin. I plan on having you on a lot more.
Thank you.
This has been All Day Giants. Peace.